There are some former UFC champions who were once at the top of the weight divisions where they were just impressively dominating their competition, but since suffering a devastating loss, they just don't seem like the same fighters they once were. So here is 5 former champions who have declined rapidly. Number 5. Anderson Silva was once the most feared man in the middleweight division who had just outclassed his opponents with his vicious stand-up skills. After successfully winning the UFC middleweight title at UFC 64, he went on to dominantly defeat the top middleweights impressively, where he put together impressive 10 consecutive title defenses and 16 consecutive wins in the UFC. He made his fights look easy, where he would effortlessly defeat top-ranked fighters with his violent fighting style. His 11th title defense was scheduled to be against Chris Weidman at UFC 162, where he lost the fight by knockout, losing his middleweight title. He would face Chris Weidman again in a rematch at UFC 168, where he would break his leg, sidelining him for 2 years. He made his comeback against Nick Diaz at UFC 183, where the fight was ruled a no contest due to both fighters testing positive for banned substances and was suspended indefinitely. He made his comeback again, where he would lose to Michael Bisping at UFC Fight Night 84, and would next lose to Daniel Cormier in a short notice fight at UFC 200, and finally picked up a win against Derek Brunson at UFC 208. Both of his losses to Chris Weidman have took away some of his confidence, where he doesn't seem like the same aggressive fighter he once was. Even though he is at the age of 42, he's still willing to compete with the best fighters in the world, and hopefully he can walk away with a win before he retires. Number 4. Chris Weidman shocked the world when he knocked out long-reigning champion Anderson Silva at UFC 162 to become the new UFC middleweight champion of the world. He next defeated Anderson Silva in a rematch by TKO at UFC 168. He would then dominantly defeat Lyoto Machida at UFC 175 and next defeat Vitor Belfort by TKO in the first round at UFC 187. After 3 consecutive title defenses, many started to believe in Chris Weidman, where it started to become difficult to see him lose his middleweight title. In his 4th title defense, he would lose his belt to Luke Rockhold at UFC 194, where after this loss, things started to go downhill for Chris Weidman, as he would next get knocked out by Yoel Romero at UFC 205 and would lose to Gegard Mousasi by TKO in the second round at UFC 210. He finally got a win when he defeated Kelvin Gastelum by an arm triangle choke in the third round at UFC on Fox 25. The middleweight division has evolved so much since he lost his title. There's a new breed of fighters who are just killers in the weight division, where you will definitely need to rack up a few wins in order to earn a title shot. Number 3. Renan Barão was once one of the most dangerous bantamweights on the planet who would just overwhelm his opponents with his aggressive fighting style. He was confident in his abilities and would always take risks in his fights, which would earn him either a TKO or a submission victory. When he won the interim UFC bantamweight title against Uriah Faber at UFC 149, he went on to defend his title 3 times and was promoted to the official champion of the division. He was on a 31 fight winning streak and looked unstoppable. Many had believed that he would remain the champion for a very long time, but that wasn't the case. In his second official title defense, he faced TJ Dillashaw at UFC 173, where he would get outclassed for 4 rounds and was finished in the 5th round, losing his bantamweight title. He would next defeat Mitch Gagnon and would lose to TJ Dillashaw again, which forced him to move up to the featherweight division, where he lost to Jeremy Stephens at UFC Fight Night 88. He would next defeat Philip Nova and lose to Aljamain Sterling at UFC 214 at a catchweight. After suffering his loss to TJ Dillashaw, both his confidence and his aggressiveness has disappeared, where he clearly is not the same fighter he once was. The first loss to TJ Dillashaw has affected him so severely that he has become a shell of himself, not having the self-belief to use all of his skills to achieve the victory. He is a great talent, where hopefully he can regain his confidence back and go on to win some fights. Number 2. Johnny Hendricks was once known as a knockout artist who was blitzing top welterweights with his crazy knockout power. He made his way up the welterweight ladder and even managed to capture the UFC welterweight title. But as soon as USADA was implemented, things started to go downhill rapidly for him almost immediately. He would always miss weight and had bad performances. After suffering 3 losses in a row, he was forced to move up to the middleweight division, where he successfully made weight and defeated Hector Lombard at UFC Fight Night 105. Things started to look bright for Johnny Hendricks, but it didn't last long. He next came overweight against Tim Boach at UFC Fight Night 112 and was finished by TKO in the second round. Johnny Hendricks' career has fallen off the cliff, where it's difficult to see him back to his old form. He is on the verge of being cut from the UFC, and hopefully he is able to sort his issues out and get back to his winning ways. Number 1. Ronda Rousey was once one of the most dominant female fighters on the planet, who was just finishing high-level fighters within minutes. After successfully defending a title at UFC 157, she went on to dominantly defeat the top bantamweights impressively, where she racked up 6 consecutive title defenses, making her one of the most dominant champions at that time. Her 7th title defense was scheduled against Holly Holm at UFC 193, where in the fight, she was outclassed on the feet and was knocked out in the second round, losing a UFC bantamweight title. After this devastating loss, she completely disappeared from the MMA world, where after 1 year year away from the sport, she made a comeback against new champion Amanda Nunes at UFC 207, where in the fight, she didn't use the high-level judo skills that she was known for and stood in front of Amanda Nunes, who is known for her heavy hands, and tried to strike with her, which didn't go well for Ronda Rousey, as she was finished by TKO in just 48 seconds of the first round. Since that fight, she has once again removed herself from the MMA world, and we haven't heard anything from her. Even the UFC president Dana White isn't sure whether or not she will be making another comeback. She played a huge part in bringing women's MMA into the UFC, and hopefully we can see her compete in the UFC in the future.